Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Scrutiny Management Board. Councillor Murphy, Councillor Ricketts. Before we start these proceedings, may I bring to your attention some housekeeping matters. There are no expected fire alarm testing today. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the signs to the nearest fire exit and meet at the fire assembly point in Civic Square. Please can I ask that you use your microphone when addressing the meeting and that it be switched off when you're not using it. Your mobile phones also turned to silent. This meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing. By entering the Warspite room and during the course of the meeting, councillors are consenting to being filmed and to the use of these recordings for webcasting. Thank you. Item number 1, Elliot, have we had any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. No apologies received for today.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interests. Yes, Steve.
Good point. Is there anybody that can't make this meeting that's given apologies because of the time of the meeting? Not councillors, but staff or visitors. Has anyone said I can't make it because I've got a family or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge.
I haven't received any from councillors or staff.
Chair, sorry, Chair, just to elaborate on that, a survey did go out, Steve, and everybody, I mean, I don't know how many responses Chair got back, but everybody had the opportunity then to say whether they could make a 5 o'clock meeting or a 2 o'clock meeting.
Yeah, I know that. It wasn't about the councillors. It was about all the staff and everyone that comes to see us. That's what.
I think your question's been answered, Councillor Ricketts. We move on. Item number 2. Is any councillors got any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting? No. Thank you very much. Minutes of the last meeting. Are members happy to confirm the minutes of the last meeting held on the 23rd of July? But at that meeting, we also went into part 2. So if there's any questions or comments relating to the part 2 meeting, before I approve them, we would have to go into part 2 again. So I'm taking it from the lack of hands that there's none. So I will sign both of those minutes off as accurate. Thank you. Item number 4, Chair's urgent business. None has arisen. So we will move directly to item number 5, which is the select committee review on the outstanding cycling one. So I'm going to hand over to Elliot to go through that.
Thank you, Chair. So committee members will find in their pack the select committee review plan. As a reminder, on 27th of March 2025, the board discussed issues arising from the changing nature of cycling, particularly relating to food delivery riders and concerns for pedestrian safety in the city centre. As part of 4 recommendations as set out in the report, the board agreed to establish a select committee to explore these issues further, drawing on the expertise of key city centre businesses, partners, delivery riders and agencies. Since the passing of these recommendations, work has been ongoing to help scope and shape the select committee review. This has included positive conversations with key partners and potential witnesses and experts, encouraging their attendance, and much of this has been done by Councillor John Stevens, who was chair of the board at the time. We've also completed supporting actions, such as the submission of a letter to the Secretary of State for Transport, and members have been copied into that response. Members are now asked to review the draft select committee plan and, subject to any amendments and shaping from yourselves, approve it so that the arrangements can be put in place. As a quick summary, the primary purpose that we've identified for the Select Committee is to review the evidence, to respond to and act upon concerns raised by members of the public regarding pedestrian safety. These concerns particularly relate to food delivery riders, their conduct, bike legality, and concerns for disabled and vulnerable pedestrian groups. Purpose to develop a greater understanding of the issues, responsibilities, and potential solutions across multi-agency partners and organisations, and to work to ensure a balance is restored. As set out in the paper, the proposed membership is the proportionality of the Scrutiny Management Board. Although the board are able to shape this, you could consider a smaller group, a larger group, and it doesn't have to be the membership as of the Scrutiny Management Board. Members identified a number of areas for further clarity and exploration. Those are set out in the report, but we will bring a comprehensive briefing paper to the Select Committee to base the analysis. What I'm looking for you, do members have any other points for clarification or investigation for inclusion in that pack? As well as that, we have membership to consider. So it's currently listed as members of the public, delivery riders, delivery agencies, city centre businesses, the city centre company, Devon and Cornwall Police, relevant council officers and relevant cabinet members. I would welcome any thoughts on expanding that or amending. The Select Committee will meet over the course of one day with a full schedule to be determined following confirmation of attendees. Have set a provisional date within the report of the 26th of November, but that may shift based on membership and availability of witnesses. Following the consideration of the Select Committee will make recommendations to the Cabinet as appropriate. If further analysis or action is required, the Scrutiny Management Board may wish to convene another meeting of the Select Committee. I'll now pass back to you, Chair, for any comments from members.
Okay, Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Councillor Coker. Yeah, the main issue of concern about delivery cyclists is who they are and the illegal working element to this. Is that going to be part of the scope? Because that's the main issue. That's the sort of national conversation at the moment that we need to face head on. And just to get some comfort that everything's in good order with delivery drivers.
I'm going to go take questions first. Okay. Any other questions? In answer to your question, Councillor Ricketts, that will be able to be worked through on the Select Committee because it's everything to do with the issue. Is there any other, Councillor Holloway?
The scope of this obviously focuses on the city centre, and I think rightly so. I'd just like to sort of note really that I know there are public concerns around a number of other fast food delivery hotspots across the city, thinking particularly about the McDonald's on Tavistock Road. If you've ever tried to drive to the north of the city on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning on hangover day, the traffic can get a bit precarious there. So I think, if there can be some thought given to hotspots which maybe are outside the city centre, I don't want to increase the scope ridiculously, but I think there is a degree of public concern in some of those other areas. Councillor Finn, I think that's sort of your patch, isn't it? You'll understand what I mean, yeah.
Okay, point noted, note taken. Right, I think the first thing that we need to establish is how many committee members do we feel it appropriate that all of us do it, or would we have a smaller committee, or do we open it even wider? I'd just like some comments on that, please. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. I would suggest that we look at a smaller, more focused meeting, select committee, sorry, to go through this. I think if we have the full management board scrutiny members, we risk it being too big. It can make it more difficult for people to engage with us. And, no disrespect to anybody at all, but if we can't get a full table around here for this meeting, how are we going to manage it for select committee anyway? So I suggest we keep it small.
Thank you for that. Any other comments, councillor Ricketts?
I agree. It needs to be a small mobile team. Looking at it, just maybe 5 or 6, and just hammer it out and get all the details out in that meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to propose that you leave that as a joint decision for the chair and vice chair. Is that okay for the number? Okay, thank you very much for that.
Chair, can I just, you know where it says witnesses and expert participation, could I just, maybe if we added on that list, the Plymouth Cycling Club, because they might come with some ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the point of today, to make sure that we've got all the relevant people,
Yeah, because I mean, yeah.
and we will add them. Thank you, councillor Murphy. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to build on Councillor Murphy's point, and in part triggered by Councillor Ricketts' earlier question, we're obviously got number 2 on their delivery riders and drivers. It feels to me like some of the questions may be geared towards the platforms that the delivery riders are employed through, such as, you know, your sort of Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat, etc. I feel it would maybe unfair on some of those riders and drivers for them to be grilled on company policy, on employment checking. It may be that we want to seek, as part of your setting out the scope and membership, that we want to seek some advanced statements rather than invite some of these companies in. I don't know, but I think we should acknowledge that delivery riders aren't effectively spokespeople for their entire companies.
I think that's a very valid point. So, yeah, we will make note and do that. Thank you, Charlotte. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just mulling over what Councillor Ricketts said about we don't know who they are. And something that I read in probably The Guardian, I'm guessing, was talking about how the companies give an account to somebody who's an adult and allowed to drive and ride for these kinds of things. But then that adult will sometimes sell it on to a lot of underage people. And I don't know how you would get that into the scope, but there is another issue there in that we don't know who they are because we don't know if they really are the account holder. And that's something that has been reported on the national media.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take that into account when we do our final proposal and then circulate it to members. Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. So apparently I do have to vote on this now, that this is what we've agreed? Okay, so the proposal is, as we've discussed. Could I ask all those in favour to show, please? That's passed. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to propose that we next do item 6, and Councillor Lowry is present for that. I'm going to ask for members to agree that we move item number 7 to item number 8 and move up item 8 to 7, which is the risk management, because that's Councillor Lowry as well, so that we do both the Councillor Lowry's and then we move on to Councillor Pemberthy. So that's my proposal, and I know my vice chair is happy with that. Are members happy? Excellent, thank you very much. So we will now move to Finance Monitoring Report Month 3 and welcome Councillor Lowry to our meeting. And obviously Ian's here anyway. So I'm gonna ask Councillor Lowry to make a brief introduction and then questions from board members. So Councillor Lowry, welcome. It's all over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I will be relatively brief, but I will give you a recap of the papers you've got before you, just to help jog everyone's memory, but I'm sure you've had an opportunity to read them all. So we're talking about Q1 here, which is the first 3 months of the financial year, and you'll see the report refers to a adverse variance of some £2.609 million against an approved revenue budget. And this reflects a number of emerging pressures across the key services. And you often hear me always say the same words, which are, and I hope you all remember them yourself by now, which I'm sure you do. The pressures that exist in the local authority are normally around the number of children we take into care, the provision of sound educational needs, homelessness, and adults. And they're consuming approximately 85% of our core revenue budget. So within the report, you will see some comments reflecting on, in respect specifically to children's services, saying that there's a total pressure of some £418,000 identified in children's social care placements. These are primarily due to an increase in the number of independent sector placements, where previously we determined a budget assumption that has increased slightly by an additional 2 placements. And you will also see comments in refer to unregistered placements has risen to 9, which is also 2 above our planned figure, given an additional pressure of some £697,000 against the budget. We've also reflected an additional cost advert variance of £1.557 million. This is primarily due to additional survey requirements in facility management services, and these were not expected at the time of setting the budget. You'll recall, I think, Chair, you may have had a discussion about the asset register for the council and the need for us to improve significantly on our control of our corporate estate. So we are carrying out a very comprehensive survey of all our assets to ensure they're fit for purpose, taking into consideration things like obviously electricity, the structure of the building, radon gas, the new regulations in relation to building services, and so on and so forth. So we have undertaken a tremendous amount of work, and that will inform our asset register going forward to ensure it's fit for purpose, and then we can make some proper decisions around those assets and how we use them. Also in the report, you'll remember that we set a target of approximately £11 million for savings this financial year, and to date we have banked some £4.7 million, represent 43%. And of course, we will work incredibly hard over the coming months and the remainder of the financial year to ensure as many of those measures are enacted. And we will continue, of course, to closely monitor the budget and report back to you as and when you require us to do so in respect to our budget monitoring. Moving on to the capital programme, I think many of you would have discussed this last week at Full Council, and you'll see there has been an additional increase in the budget for Q1 of approximately £38.2 million. This is primarily to pay for the works in relation to the upgrade to the civics, the National Marine Park, some additional work for providing additional SEND placements for children requiring our support, and some additional money for housing. You'll be pleased to know that a majority of the funding of this extra £38 million we're referring to is grant funding, and therefore it does not form part of our corporate borrowing. So if that's okay, Chair, I'm happy to leave it as that for the moment.
Ian, is there anything you want to add?
Nothing at this stage, Chair, but happy equally to answer questions if they arise.
Okay, I'm going to break tradition and go to questions not from the chair, from everybody else to start with. Councillor Finn.
Yeah, Mark, thank you for that. Recently had somebody mention about Merchant House, for example. They applied to buy it and the council wouldn't engage with them. Is there an opportunity for a bit more openness and transparency with regard to disposals? They put in a plan, a workable plan, a business plan as well, but they were rejected by the council. Apparently the council has some other use of it. So it's just regard to disposal. And the second thing is regard to SEND budgets. Do they have to come on book next year as it was previously, or are they still off book?
them separately. So firstly, in respect of disposal of assets, we have a surplus property declaration system that we put into place, which when a department of the council decides it no longer needs to use a building, it consults itself first, and then it consults the ward members relevant to that, and then it comes to the cabinet member responsible for signing off. And once that's done, it then goes into the public domain, so that maybe that we announce we're going to sell it and we're open to bids and offers, and that's done by our economic development team, that's headed up by James Watt in this instance. Or sometimes we simply go to an auction house and we dispose of it by the highest bidder. We do get a lot of people who express an interest in stuff, and on many occasions, of course, they don't really have the knowledge of what it is they're looking to purchase or necessarily have any money, which I often find is the case. I'm happy to sell in accordance with our procedures, of course, to anybody who wishes to purchase anything. But I often find that somebody may have a lovely interest in buying the merchant house. I'd quite like to buy it myself. It'd be a lovely place to live in, but the cost of refurbishing that building and maintaining that asset would probably be more than I could afford. So whilst I might desire to do it, I probably couldn't do so. But if you've got a specific case of an individual who's written to you that feels that they didn't get an opportunity, I'm more than happy to look into that and go back to the officers for an explanation as to why they didn't respond to this individual. But I'm personally not aware of anybody in that instance.
No, the reason I said that actually came from a press source, not actually a constituent. That apparently had worked up a plan. Now, they said it was grade 2 listed. No, I always thought Merchant's House was grade 1 listed.
It's 2-star. It's grade 2 star is the correct terminology, I believe. I can't remember. Yes, it's grade 2 star. It's not 1 star, no. But if there is an individual from the press who you know, then if they've got an issue, I'm more than happy to take it up.
That's why I said I'd bring it up at this opportunity first, because obviously they apparently tried approaching the council and basically hit a brick wall. Apparently the plans were all worked out. But anyway, that's enough said on that, I think.
If they wish to contact me instead of you, I'm very happy to look
And
into it.
you're happy to deal with that? Okay, well, I'll
And I
pass it
think the
your way.
second issue you raised in respect to send, are you referring to the DSGs? Is that what you mean,
Yeah, because
not send?
apparently, no, send, what was it, the send budgets had to come on book by the 26th of March next year?
That's DSGs.
DSG,
That's
yeah.
DSGs, yeah.
So
That's not send,
yeah.
that's something.
Is that still the case, or is it not?
It's not, and Ian's probably best to give you the exact details in this instance.
So, thank you, Councillor Aaron, your chair. The dedicated schools grant, the backstop, you're right, was 2026 as part of the Fair Funding 2 consultation. It was announced that would be pushed back by a further 2 years. There will be a DFE white paper coming out in the autumn, I think towards the end of the year now, given where the government's current timetable is, that will set out the reforms, and we expect to set out what the expectation is in terms of that, the Highness block that is held on Brandon-Shee that you refer to in terms of the dedicated schools grant. There was also mentioned as part of the fair funding consultation response, they will also make reference to what the expectation is in relation to that Highness block.
Okay. Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Chair. There's a pressure here with the customer and corporate services, which I don't know if it's quite unusual to see a big pressure there. Looking at reports over the years, I just wanted if you could just say why you think that's occurred. But there's a point I just wanted to tease out. It's on page 22, 8.13. The 388 pressure is being forecasted across the directorate relating to unachievable vacancy savings targets due to service demand within finance and legal, not allowing vacancies to be held. I read it a couple of times, just couldn't quite get my head around it. If you could just explain the situation to me, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer, but you can go for it.
Customer and corporate, Councillor Lowry touched on a few of the key areas that were driving those pressures. So we've got the delayed opening of the Guildhall, and there's an FM, facilities management income within customer and corporate that would have arisen from the Guildhall opening, which is obviously no longer to be realised. The reference to those surveys and that work around our FM space in terms of really investing in our asset base to ensure we have visibility of all of the areas of need is a further pressure. And you're right, that reference, that 400,000 is customer and corporate is, provision of a lot of professional services across the organisation. There is an expectation in terms of the budget setting around when we look to recruit roles. Often there will be a time lag in terms of recruitment, and we see a repeated saving in effect against your overall headcount within that budget expected against the timescales to recruit. What we're saying here is that based upon the level of demand and the level of headcount, what had been factored into the budget at this point, we don't think and we don't know what will happen with headcount as we go through the year, but at this point of the year, we are flagging that based on headcount as we enter the year, that vacancy saving, as it's termed, i.e. An expectation not to be at full headcount for the full year, will be achieved within the finance team and also the legal team who are managed.
Sorry, in my mind, I was thinking that you were trying to make savings with headcount. Yeah, that was the initial idea. But because there's so much pressure on finance and legal, that you actually need to recruit for those positions, which is causing the pressure.
Councillor Beckett, today I had a meeting with the monitoring officer, and she has 2 vacancies in a department for lawyers to join the department, and the expectation at the beginning of the financial year is that we would not recruit those individuals. But we've had further discussions, and we feel that we need to recruit those further individuals to carry out the work that the council needs to do. You'll be well aware, for instance, we've got a very ambitious capital programme, which means we have to buy stuff and transact more in the legal space. And we're working very closely with Homes England. So there's more legal work than we envisaged. However, the upside of it is actually a majority of that legal work can be firstly capitalised, so it will come out of the revenue budget, and secondly can be chargeable. So actually there is sometimes even a profit that's attributed to it. In the discussion that I had today was about growing our legal services department, because actually we do a very good job, and we could even provide support to other local authorities, or sometimes we're outsourcing that work. So let's reflect on the scale of the work we've got going forward, which is good news. And if we can make a profit by not externalising the work or selling our work to others, then that's the approach that we should take. Does that help?
I really appreciate that, Mark, because you're on the ball. I've raised it. You've had a meeting. I mean, obviously, you're talking about a couple of highly paid members of staff, and that can be where, from the public's perspective, the wage bill can get very big, very quick. But yeah, we'll watch this space on it. But I understand the situation now.
I think, Chair, at some stage I'd very welcome us undertaking some form of scrutiny in this arena, because today we talked about putting a new business case forward, explaining perhaps some of the detail that I referred to, so that maybe there's an opportunity going forward to look further into that.
Any other questions? Councillor Freeman?
Thank you, Chair. Might need to go back to basics a little bit for me with this. Okay. Right, children, young people and families, table 4A. So we talk about the pressure on the budget.
Councillor Freeman, can I just interrupt you? If you're going to refer to something, could you please refer to the page number so that everyone knows where you're talking from?
Of course, Chair. Apologies, Chair. Sorry. Page 19. So, right, sorry, lost my train of thought then. Okay.
Table 4A.
Thank you. So, yeah, so we talk about the pressure on the budget and the mitigations there. I just need a little bit of explanation, if you don't mind. So it says vacancy savings targets achieved. And then that's under mitigation. And then under pressure, we talk about agency staffing costs, although I know further down the explanation says about there are planned exit dates of agency staff through Q2. Then there's a potential shortfall on vacancy savings targets. And then there's the delivery plan pressure and additional savings targets. Can you kind of like explain to me a little bit how that works together? Because one of the things that jumps out to me most of all is on about vacancy saving targets and then shortfalls on that. And then we've got agency staffing costs to potentially be filling those vacancies that actually maybe we need to be employing staff in. And but yeah, if you could go through that with me, if you wouldn't mind.
It's a big department with many elements to it, and I think you'll note that we've got an improvement plan in place for children's services, of course, which means part of the criticisms in essence was we had too many agency staff and we had a high turnover of staff. So the department's being restructured and has been restructured to reduce our dependency on agency staff, and we'll always have a degree of agency staff, that will always exist, but it's perhaps not the best way to run the department. So yes, we're firstly trying to reduce those number of agency staff, because they can be very expensive, and equally they can up and leave at a very short notice, which can leave many of those children who require our support not getting the continuity they necessarily need. In respect of the vacancy target, we set a vacancy target across the whole of the department, and that's why you see that probably in every element. And sometimes, as we've just heard and discussed, we have to change that to flex in accordance with what's currently happening around us. I can't give you the exact details of who those staff are and what, but I'm very happy to get that information to you and send it to you as a cohort, so you understand which department's got these vacancies, which has got agency, and give you that additional information in the future.
Sorry, through you, Chair. That would be really helpful. It's just about being able to fully understand.
It is very confusing, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Finn.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on what Councillor Freeman said. We've been told over time that obviously the cost of outside placements were absolutely ridiculous, and we're going to be bringing that back home, more localised. What's the current progress on bringing those children back into the boundary of Plymouth?
I think Councillor Finn, for the exact detail of because it's about a dozen projects there. So it's either something for the Children's Services Board, or once again, if you wish the information to be sent to you, more than happy to do so. I weirdly went through it with the team yesterday afternoon. The progress isn't as fast as I'd like it to be for obvious reasons, because I'm a cabinet member for finance, and those placements externally to the local authority are incredibly expensive. And you've heard Councillor Lang referring to profiteering almost in that respect. So yes, we're very keen, and hence we have initiated those projects, and they have been slower to start than I would have liked them to have been, and we are sourcing properties to enable us to do that. And of course, the first thing we're doing is reviewing our own property base to make sure that we have some solutions. And we will be making our first purchase very shortly of a property that will assist. I'm not going to give details here because we've not done that, but I also hope that we can utilise some of our existing properties that will be more financially beneficial to us in the long term and enable us to move faster when we do need to move. In addition to that, there's also like a licensing permission you need from Ofsted comes to mind for this, and additionally you need a service manager. So we've started the recruitment as well in parallel with this. So yes, we are progressing, not as fast as I'd like us to do so, and that's reflected in the expenditure in the capital programme. If you look at children's services there, we haven't spent our expectations, haven't met that yet, but we are moving forward now, and I think we have got a number of options and a number of projects taking us forward, which will hopefully come to fruition in the coming months that will help to address some of those high need placements.
Councillor Holloway. Then Councillor Ricketts. Anyone else? No. those two. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your report, Councillor Lowry. My question refers to point 3.4 on marked page 19 of the document in the Adults Health and Communities Directorate section. It refers to community connections and how there's been an observed increase in the number of clients accessing temporary accommodation in the lead up to the implementation of the Renters Reform Bill in autumn 25. That's sort of one of the kind of caveats put on about the overall kind of hold position of that directorate. Do you have any more information on the sort of scale of the additional increase? Is this, it says in the comment that it would be reviewed in month 4, which I believe would have been July, so has already happened. Is this a dramatic overspend, a dramatic underspend? Like it's difficult from that comment to sort of see what's going on and the potential knock-on effects to other parts of service delivery. Thank you.
I have been briefed on this, but my memory evades me as to the exact numbers of. It is quite considerable, yes. There is undoubtedly a change in the mindset of landlords, often having reviewed the bill myself with the housing team in detail. I think what is proposed is more than fair and reasonable, but maybe other people haven't had the opportunity to read it in detail. So I think there's an element of the market anticipating something worse than it actually is. I mean, if you're a good landlord, you've got nothing to be frightened of whatsoever. You know, in fact, it gives you some security of tenure. You know, I think it's a very sensible bill. But unless you've read it, of course, and if you were to hear some of the noises, you'd be rightfully thinking, oh my God, you know, I won't be able to sell my house. Well, you can sell your house. Just let you can sell your house now. So, but the market has reacted to that, and there's been a number of Section 21 evictions as a consequence of that, which has seen an increase in us as a local authority having to provide extra housing. That information is all available within the council, by the way, because I know I've sat with Councillor Pemberton and gone through it. So once again, very happy to give that to you as a committee for your further consideration. I don't know if you wouldn't remember the exact details yourself, neither would you, but Chris might know. You could ask him in a minute.
No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you. Yeah, just thanks for the earlier answer. Just teasing out on page 28, the gross debt, which makes my mind boggle every when I look at it every time. Can you just take us through how comfortable we are with that level of debt, which is going to increase to every single year, and how I assume we need to keep that capital financing requirement as a higher figure, don't we? And are we comfortable doing that? Otherwise, we're going to get ourselves in real trouble. I just wanted to get a context of how easy this is to balancing that debt that we have ongoing.
Well, I'll make a brief comment and I'll point to page 28 and section 13.3.2, in which the setting of the authorised limits is informed by the SIPFA Prudential Code, and the Council continues to operate well within these defined boundaries, for instance. So that's an assurance that we should take. There's an element within these figures that are incredibly confusing and somewhat misleading, because you heard a conversation previously about DSGs, for instance, which from memory are in the region of about £50 million. Well, they have to go on the books, even though there's likely to be a government intervention to resolve this, because if they don't, many councils will struggle. You'll also read within the paperwork, for instance, that the energy to waste plant, which is a PFI contract, is included in these figures and so on and so forth. And then you'll also read that there's a proportion of debt against your net revenue. Well, that's well and good, but that's like me and you living in a house together, but we're only taking your income into consideration. Because, for instance, we have an investment fund that's not reflected in those figures. We have our property regeneration fund, which is, from memory, about £278 million. That's not reflected in our income. You know, the income from that, for instance, is £11 million. So we are being told by government to report your monies and your expenditure in a certain way. Well, that might be fine for a district council that doesn't have a DSG, doesn't have any PFI contracts, doesn't have a regeneration property fund, doesn't have any investments. But we, of course, do. And if you add all those into the figure, the percentage of borrowing is much more, what we would all find much more palatable. So it is incredibly complex. I can only take the assurance that I get from the Section 151 officer, and I'm sure he's more than able to speak on this subject as well, and the Treasury Management team that we've got external advisors on. So personally, I am comfortable, but there are professionals who may wish to add to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Larry. I think there's not a lot more to add. I think that's a very clear position. I think we need to be clear that certain elements that are quoted is part of the SIPFA requirement and how we set out our monitoring and the level of borrowing and or finance leases, for example, against things like the capital financing requirement, which is a theoretical measure based on your balance sheet position of the calculate accounting position in terms of borrowing. So I think we need to be very careful where we point at numbers. I think that CFR, yes, they are high numbers, but actually when you look at through table 20 and the debt at Q1, you'll see that's the 707 million. That's where we talk about borrowing. And as Councillor Lowry quite rightly says, of that, much of that is service borrowing, which is where we are financing that through initiatives or through the property regeneration fund, etc. So there are numbers in here. It is important that we display them because they are requirements of that prudential code that we monitor against, but we must equally be careful to ensure that there is clarity around what our actual position when we talk about borrowing is, and which is what we've tried to call out and we will continue to do as a finance team, is try and give that clarity around how we present these tables.
I just want to briefly come back, Steve. This is a new thing, and we put more data in here than we ever have done, and I keep adding more data to provide some clarity. But I appreciate it's incredibly confusing still, and if anyone's got any ideas on how we can make it any easier for people to understand, because if you were to read this, it would start some alarm bells ringing. But if you go into the detail, and I look at the detail, of course, and I compare ourselves to our other local authorities who are unitaries and cities and so on and so forth, and our borrowing is higher than many, but that's because we've got £250 million sat over there that we borrowed against specifically to create an asset investment fund, to create jobs, to create businesses, and to create wealth. And so therefore, if you take that off, which I can't take it off because the SIPFA code doesn't let me do that, it comes down by 250 million straight away. Well, okay, I feel a bit more chilled now, actually.
I really appreciate it, what you've said there. It's just, as councillors, we're here to scrutinise when we see things. I mean, you're coming up to £1 billion. So when the public see it, it's right that we just ask questions, and it's on record, and we're comfortable with that. It's just, I always think when I see cases, we're not in this position, by the way, but when you see cases like Birmingham going bankrupt and they start reeling off the figures, I always think, well, what was going on in those scrutiny meetings building up? So I'm just putting it out there. I'm comfortable with what you're saying. It's just difficult, like you're saying, when you add it all together for the public to get their heads round. So they go, that's incredible debt. The council's, this, that, and the other. But actually, it is complicated. Just one more, honestly. It's just because it's a double whammy item with Mark. So I know what you're saying about time. It just comes back to Councillor Finn's question about the assets. So I don't know how we can resolve this. This is a genuine question. So when we have the public interaction when we're trying to sell an asset, so let's say Pounds Park, Pounds House, we have that interaction, which is fully democratic. We see it all, we can call it in, we can make observations. The end loop is the bit that I'm struggling with. So how do we mitigate us just reading it in the newspaper when it's finally been sold. Where's the call-in procedure if we're not happy with that? It's just, I just wanted to tease that out. It's happened with Merchant House and Midland House.
Councillor Ricketts, I'm going to come in now. That is a separate point. If you'd like to make that something that we can look at, that would be absolutely fine. But actually, we're here now to look at the financial monitor, the budget of the first 3 months. So I think you make a valid point, and I'm happy for you to make a recommendation, providing the committee agree, but I don't think it's absolutely relevant to what we're discussing at the moment.
I take your point, Chair. I genuinely thought it was the right forum when we were talking about capital assets and processes, but I take it, bring it in whenever you feel, I'll put it down there, wherever you feel it fits. But I just wanted to get Mark's, before he leaves. Yeah.
I'll give Mark the opportunity, because we started down that track.
I did refer to assets, so therefore, I think your concern is with the policy, not the politics. So all I do is make the decision, sell that asset. That's it, I'm done. Nothing to do with them anymore. If that goes into officer world, and I don't get involved in any way, shape or form, nor should I get involved. And at the end of that process, they'll tell me they have made a decision and they are enacting what I've asked them to do. I have no idea often who they've sold it to. Why should I? We have made a policy decision to sell an asset in accordance with our policy, setting out what our criteria may be, and that's it. And never should we get involved in that, because if we do, we get accused of all sorts of stuff. So I have no idea who they sell it to half the time, nor should I, nor do I want to know about it. I often get loads of emails from people saying, can I buy this from you? Or, by the way, can you buy this from me? And I'm like, nothing to do with me. Policy is an officer function. So if you're not content with the policy, then that's something that you as a committee need to consider. But I would urge you that I don't think politicians should be in this space, because it's all about money, and people will say all sorts of things to achieve the objectives they want, and it's best left in officer world.
I know what you're saying, Mark. I think there's a balance to be had of completely removing yourself from a situation and taking accountability. And I didn't say I had the answer. I thought it was something we should tease out. I've spoken to other councillors cross-party about it. I won't break any confidences. But it is something, it's just like when you read the end result in the newspaper, I don't know if there's some mechanism before that happens. It might be, like you're saying, implausible to do that. But it's just something that I thought was a missing loop in what we're doing.
Councillor Finn, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I think that what Councillor Ricketts was actually saying has come up to audit and governance, and it was considered that an asset register be made available to councillors of not so much the sale, not so much the buyers or anything, but what assets are actually coming onto the market. Obviously, we're not, let's forget Merchant's House and other properties such as the hotel, etc. But say we're Pound's House, interested, so that councillors know first. I think the question was that councillors know first then, and then if can apply for a community asset, whatever, it can set a ball rolling. So I think that's all it was, and it's.
And dealing with that, the asset disposal register comes to your ward councillors first.
Okay, I'm going to interject now because we're straying down into another subject. I think Councillor Ricketts has made a point, and I think Councillor Ricketts will look into that and see what the best way. It might be worth that we get Ordnance and Governance to look at that policy. So we've got that down, and we will react to that. Right, I'm going to be extremely lenient now and go to Councillor Freeman and Councillor Allinson, and then that is it on this point.
Thank you for your leniency, Chair. It is just a quick one. Councillor Larry, on page 18, table 3, Adults Health and Communities Directorate, So for the adult social care budgets, I know that there is a large sum of money owed in respect of adult social care to Plymouth City Council. Does that get reflected within this table at all? I know money owed to the council, they're then classed as debtors, but the income that we get from them, does this get reflected in here at all?
Yes.
Councillor Allenson?
Mine's going back a point just to say that the examples specifically mentioned in the previous question both fall inside my ward, and I did receive the surplus property declaration and was invited to consult. So the councillors who ward the property is in do get informed well in advance. I got that in January this year.
I get that point, but if you're going to sell off Seaton Tower, you wouldn't just contact the 3 local councils. It's a city-wide debate and asset, and you know.
I think I've answered that question, Councillor Ricketts, already, and I am going to pull that to a close now. Is there anyone want to make any recommendations for this before I ask the committee to note point recommendations 1, 2 and 3? Councillor Finn.
Yeah, just when we said about the figures, like you said, there's a lot of detail in here, but something that came up previously, again, in audit and governance, which was meant to have been corrected, was the PFI and finance leases, just a breakdown to what those PFI and finance leases are. Because we get that, but it's obviously a collective as opposed to an individual breakdown, whether that's possible.
Yes, it's possible, and that information is reported to the Audit and Governance Committee.
So we will add that to the recommendations for you, Councillor Finn. So are we all agreed to note the minutes? Thank you very much. The other thing, before we I apologise for not saying it in advance, but I wrote to, at members' request, Councillor Lowry, for us to ask cabinet members if there was anything that we could scrutinise to help cabinet members do their job. I'm not going to go into a debate on it now because we're over time, but if you have anything that you would like this committee to help you with, if you could drop myself and Councillor Finn an email, we will put it into our work programme, providing the members of the committee agree. So thank you. So we will now jump to, on our agenda, item number 8, the Risk Management Monitoring Report for Q1. So if you'd like to introduce that, Councillor Lowry, there, or Ian, and then we will open it up to members. Thank you.
Chair, I've got a script that I'm very happy to read out here, but noting that you are already behind time, it's a very short report. I'm sure members have all had the opportunity to read it, so I'm very happy to go straight to questions if committee is content with that.
Thank you, Councillor Lowry. I wasn't quite expecting you, in all my years of knowing you, to be so brief. But I will open it. I will open it up to members. I'm looking at everybody.
I think the one principal change that members do need to be aware of, there is a risk in relation to adult social care and children's social care. That has been split out on this occasion, given the significance of the issues that exist, and they've been marked independently, and that's why you've got an additional risk in this arena. But I think it's fair to say that the risks are stable, and they aren't anything that you shouldn't be unfamiliar with.
Thank you, Councillor Lowry. Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Chair. obviously the big risk, the one that people are talking about is the civic centre redevelopment, which the costs have gone up to 46 million. And it's just such a thing that we can all see as a city. Are we okay with that? Is there any, we're not going to get any breaking news soon in the Herald or anything about the costs going up again? It's just a question I think the public would like answered, that we're okay and we're on track, because it does stick out obviously massively as the biggest thing we're doing.
Yeah, yes, and I spoke to your chair today, and I offered him, which is what he's referring to, an opportunity for you to specifically go through this as a separate project in your own space and time. I'm delighted to be able to report after my meeting with the team yesterday. Obviously, yesterday was a very busy day, as you can well imagine. We had a board meeting on the Civic. I think it's fair to say we've now got a project that's fully resourced financially. We've got a programme, a very detailed programme. We've got commitment from Homes England. We've got commitments from the college. I think we've got a brilliant, very, very exciting project that's ready to fly now. And I offered to the chair today to bring it to you for a proper review, and I really welcome your contribution. So I hope that, and I'll be taking it to cabinet shortly as well. But it's, you know, it's a 5-year programme, so there's plenty of opportunities for Scrutiny to get involved, and I very much welcome that.
Absolutely brilliant, Mark. Thank you. I think I'd definitely go with that, Chair. Definitely need to have a set piece on that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just talking to the chair of the growth one. We've got that recommendation that we will add it. We'll agree to that. It's whether we do it as a management board or whether we send it to the appropriate scrutiny panel.
I think because it is such a big thing, it could warrant coming here, to be fair.
Thank you very much. We will put that down on our work programme, and I will discuss with the chair of the growth. But I think you're probably right that it should come here.
That's me then. Oh, what do you mean, Councillor?
Well, it's Lee and I were just talking about where should it go, and that actually, because it should fit into more than one, we think it should come here. But I'm very happy to be led by members as to where they think it should go. Councillor Finn?
Yeah, just to clarify, this is a fine line between growth and infrastructure and housing and communities. Yes, yeah, I can think, yeah.
I think
We've answered our own
because of its
question.
uniqueness and the sums of
should
money
come
we're
here.
talking about, I think it's pretty
Yeah,
squared
so
away
we
to
will
come here.
add that. Are members agreed that we can add that to our work programme? Yeah, excellent, thank you.
Yeah, Mark, we've heard a lot of figures bandied around in regard to affordable homes. Now, the standard
Is this in
definition.
relation to the risk register we're talking about now?
No, it isn't. No, it's not. Right.
Any other questions on the risk register? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've asked this kind of question from the other perspective before about children's services, and you referred to Councillor Lang calling it profiteering, and you know I've pretty much done the same in public meetings as well, and been horrified by the profits these companies are making. So are we? How? I know you alluded to it in the last section, but how are we managing the risk of those costs which are being charged to us? The escalation of the children's provision costs without additional services for the actual children is my point, really. Sorry, please answer, sorry. Oh.
It is at the forefront of my mind, because those placements are incredibly expensive. And as you can see, a small increase in the number of placements has an exponential increase in finance. So I can assure you the team, as well as Jemima and myself and many other people, are completely focused on this all the time. Hence, we've had enough of this profiteering, and hence we're building our own. And Your Children's Services panel will shortly be going through this in fine detail, I'm sure.
Thank you. I can see no one else. So would the panel agree to note this register and that? And so can I ask all those in agreement? Thank you. That's there. Councillor Larry, I'd like to thank you for your time tonight at this scrutiny panel. And we look forward as a management board to be offering our help for you going forward for this year. So thank you very much.
Chair, can I just add in relation to your agreement to take the Civic forward as a management board one, I'd like to do that sooner rather than later, please, because we're just about to go live and it'd be nice for you guys to see exactly what it is we're doing and be able to contribute.
Thank you very much. We will, with our officer, we will get that sorted out. Thank you. Right, now we move back to item number 7, which is the corporate plan monitoring report for 24-25. And I welcome Councillor Pemberthy to the meeting. And Paul Stevens, who's online. And I forgot to mention at the bottom of the meeting, Glenda is also observing the meeting from afar. Right, so Councillor Pemberthy, over to you for an introduction.
Thank you, Chair. And as a reminder, this is headline stuff because different scrutiny panels pick up on different areas of it. And this is the report for the year ending April. I'm actually not going to talk a lot about what's in the report. I'm going to talk about what we're doing next, because I think that's actually probably more important for you as a board to understand and to feed into. This report has been built around an inherited structure that is increasingly proving not fit for purpose, because it isn't actually a performance report, nor is it a proper corporate plan report. It's trying to do both things in the same document, and they're actually very different things. And that's led to a lot of frustration as we've tried to prepare it, because we're not able to deliver what's needed in terms of performance reporting nor corporate plan reporting in doing what we're doing. So I've been working with Tracy Lee, Professor Steve, Dr. Ruth and Paul on a better way forward. Firstly, we need a performance report for all of the council's activities. That isn't covered in this report. It needs to be one that supports management decisions at all levels, political leadership and scrutiny, and public accountability. Once again, because this report doesn't cover everything the council does, it's not doing that in an effective way. This performance framework needs to be long-term, quantifiable and comparable, and that is therefore something that isn't covered by a corporate plan. It's a different beast. But we also need a corporate plan report. Now, corporate plans within councils are set on administration priorities set out in manifestos, which inevitably mean they change fairly frequently and tend to need to be more descriptive and talk about things other than lots of stats, which is what a performance report needs to do. So in terms of performance reporting, the other thing we need to do is link to national requirements. For a whole number of years, we'd had no particular national frameworks to work against, which had made it a little bit harder to do. Between 24 and 25, we had offlog from government, which was concentrating on just a few areas and not lots of others. We have those areas where we need to be very compliant and have a lot of data. So, for example, children's, where that is already sort of set out. And the government has actually, over the last 12 months, been consulting on a new local government outcomes framework, which every local authority is going to have to deliver to, and which actually will make it a lot easier for us to have performance frameworks that fit within a context of public accountability, good management, good governance, and good ability to compare ourselves to others. It is expected that that will probably come into force from April next year. And so we are working towards where we see that will be. A lot of the data we're already producing for LGA Inform, which all members are able to access, as are members of the public. And so we already have a whole load of data sets. So our new performance framework will deliver on this. It'll be based on balanced scorecards by directorate. We'll be looking at the role of AI in gathering a lot of the data together, because gathering data can be very people heavy. And at the moment, Paul is our main resource for doing all of this across everything. So there's a limit to what he can do. It'll also ensure we have consistency of approach and data across all teams in the council. So we have common data sources, which means that we have accurate reporting that we can all trust. In terms of audiences, we're needing to look at how we have those publicly accessible, information for CMT, SMT, DMT and managers and team leaders, and clear information for members, whether that be through scrutiny or through cabinet. The new CEO, starting work next week, I think, is going to be picking up this, but we're not leaving it to him to start it from scratch. We've been working on it, and I'm meeting with him in about 10 days' time to talk about how we take this forward. As well as that, the corporate plan will be now much more focused, and that will be about anticipated activity for the coming 12 months or until the next, in this case, until the next election, around the corporate plan. So it's very clear what we are planning to do on those specific areas, because we're not going to try and put the performance stuff into the corporate plan, which is what we've been trying to scratch our heads on doing. And to do that, for your next meeting, we will be bringing you the new performance framework for you to have a look at. It's currently, I think, next week going to CMT. It's yet to go to cabinet planning, but we'll be bringing it here as well within that cycle, so that you can see how we pull all of that together in a framework that is written up and published. Balanced scorecards, some will be much more advanced than others. So the Growth Directorate currently doesn't have anything like that. Children's is really heavily developed. So they'll be in different stages of development over the course of the next few months. We'll be bringing all of those up to speed, but we'll bring you those, and we'll bring you a new corporate plan report as well. We're also looking at how performance reports relate to key plans and themes. So using the same sets of data, but pulling those out. So those can be used by scrutiny committees and partnerships in making sure that we're delivering on those really big things. Now we're piloting that on housing, because Plan for Homes was being talked about as we began to do this. And we recently presented at the recent Growth and Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee, where we present annually, the first year's report showing how we're beginning to pull that data against action plans and everything else into one consistent area. We also, within that, hone specifically in on homelessness, and every 6 months we report to the Housing and Communities panel. And the same set of data is informing the Plymouth Housing Development Partnership on the development of affordable housing, so that we're actually able to use consistently the same sets of data in multiple places, and pull it thematically together, as well as through directorates and the corporate plan. That process is being baked into the development of Building Bridges to Opportunity and the Plan for People and Nature. Because the economic strategy is new, we're able to start putting that into the way the economic strategy reports as well. So we're trying to be really clever with what we do with data. So the performance data drives directorate decisions, partnership decisions, can support scrutiny and enable good governance through informed decision making. So I'm not going to go into depth with a report that's on the last financial year. Happy to answer questions if I can, but thought it was more important to talk to you about why I don't think that's a good report, and why going forward we're going to be doing something actually quite radically different in order to be better at what we do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to kick this off to start with. When you say it's going to be brought to our next committee to look at, does that mean that is the thing that has been decided and will be done? Or are you bringing it to us to ask us for any comments or suggestions to improve it going forward?
Both. What we are going to be using it for is the balanced scorecards and the process we are doing, but this is a year where we are implementing at the same time, so suggestions for change can be brought into that so that we can then roll that forward as a full suite next year for further review to check it's all right. What we don't want to do is not do performance reporting properly, and at the moment we're not doing performance reporting properly. So that's there. The corporate plan, it'll just be we're presenting the corporate plan report in a different way because we're not trying to do two things in the same place.
It's nice to hear you say that we can have an influence over something, because I think it really does matter. But I do agree that with this form, and I've already said that, but what I didn't want is for this committee not to have any input into what we're going to do to make it better. So thank you for that. I'm now going to open it up to questions on the report in front of us, bearing in mind that Councillor Penberthy is the author rather than will be able to make detailed decisions on highways, etc. So any general comments or questions that you've got, Councillor Finn?
Yeah, Councillor Penberthy, thank you for the report, very in-depth. Can you clarify this affordable housing definition? We hear in the market that it's 20% less market value as for the first part. I've got a couple of other questions just to follow.
Councillor Finn, we talked about this at your scrutiny panel, and I believe we provided your scrutiny panel with a briefing note on affordable ownership and renting. If not, I will ask for it to be reissued to you. Affordable ownership is described in legislation, and it covers a range of different sorts of housing. Social rent, the old council rent type thing, market affordable, which is 20% off the market rent in an area. It covers shared ownership, some buy-to-let schemes. It's normally offered by registered providers, but under certain circumstances defined through section 106s and in perpetuity agreements can be provided by non-registered providers. It is not an easy option. Also within that are almshouses and shared houses and supported housing and all sorts of other things. It isn't this is the one sort of affordable ownership. It is a whole range of different models.
It's my fault for not making it clear. A new house on the market classed on an estate as affordable housing. That's
a new house on an estate might be an affordable home. It might be an affordable home at social rent. It might be an affordable home at market affordable rent. It might be an affordable home on shared ownership. It might be an affordable home on rent to buy. But it could also be an open market home that is delivered for someone to buy and occupy or to buy and rent. So a home on a new development can be any one of those, partly described by section 106s, partly described by developer and owner intent.
okay, so just to ask, for the benefit in future, because obviously affordable homes covers such a wide area, is it possible to have a breakdown when proposals are made that there's, we've got so many houses at affordable, exactly what the criteria applies to that? The second thing is...
And quickly, Councillor Finn, I'm here to talk about a performance framework. This is getting into the detail. The report we presented to the Growth and Infrastructure panel recently covered the different forms of affordable home ownership that we were delivering in the last 12 months and had in the pipeline, including social rent, people with disabilities. So we've already reported that to the relevant panel.
Thank you, Chris. I was just going to intervene, but because we were not on the report. So Councillor Finn will bring that up at another appropriate meeting. Councillor Ricketts, Councillor Holloway, Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the plan for homes, which we've discussed before, about how we're not building many houses, basically. It's pretty poor for the targets we're trying to reach. What's interesting is if we can have a proper breakdown of the figures. So we know that there's 8,000 people on the housing register, and we know that, you know, Angela Rain previously made a big thing about 1.5 million homes over 5 years. And obviously our targets were amended as a city. Can we just differentiate that from student development? I still don't understand why purpose-built student accommodation goes in the housing figures. Because to me, that's manipulating the figures which are already low to try and make things look better than they are. So for your next report, can you just separate the student build figures from the housing numbers, please?
Once again, Chair, this is getting into practicalities. We reported on Plan for Homes. We report on housing completions according to the national standards. As I've said, we're trying to set one set of data. That set of data is the data on housing completions that is required by MHCLG, and it is put together in the categories that MHCLG require. And we will continue to try and do that, because what we've just talked about, or I've just talked about, is making things comparable and in line with what is required, because we don't have armies of analysts. What we do have is data sets that are collected in accordance with requirements, and housing is one where we are collecting in accordance to national requirements. Student housing does count in that, and it counts towards housing numbers, it counts towards Section 106s. In fact, the current government is also talking about it counting in additional payment to local authorities in lieu of rates not received. So, you know, I think there are a whole range of things, but there are lots of other forms of housing that also count that aren't traditional housing. What we will continue to do, as I have said, is pull together the information in ways that are nationally comparable and able to be used in those forms as well. I will ask the team to look at what that means for Plan for Homes, but as Plan for Homes doesn't talk about student housing, we won't, I think, be reporting on student housing. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not going to change the Plan for Homes 12 months down the line in order to meet your requirement for talking about student housing, because that isn't something that we are currently working actively to support. That's what the market is doing in the city, not what we're doing in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Pemberthy. Councillor,
Can-
I will come back to you. Go on then.
It's completely linked. So, listen, thank you, Chair. Listen, that was a fair question. The numbers, we're not talking about huge numbers here, because we're not building very much. Most of the figures are in report, which are very low. And it was 236 net dwellings in 2024 and 96 affordable homes just gone. We're not talking about a major piece of work. I've asked for a simple request that we're just breaking it down to student numbers. You're pushing back on it. You're trying to make out that it's a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's a very simple exercise that you can report back. It's a request from a councillor on a panel, and I'm leaving it with you, Chair, that that's a request. And as a cabinet member, if it's decided that we want to do that, then you should take that into account and report. And that's exactly the question I'm asking about how we see reports come to us on a performance basis. I know you don't want to do it, Councillor, but we
Right,
can't hold
I'm
it
going to
into account.
intervene now.
I was going to say,
I'm chairing this meeting, gentlemen. All right. I have heard Councillor Rickett's question. I've heard Councillor Pemberthy's answer, and I'm going to move on. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chair. I always love talking about data, and you talked about it a lot. You mentioned the work that's going on to see how AI can help in the way we not only collect, but report on and analyse our data and what informs this report. There's a lot in that, and it potentially really poses the question of how we reporting ourselves, if we're doing a good job or not. I speak, as Steve will know, on our committee a lot about, I have spoken in the past about how we rely on certain systems, what threats we have and such. Can you just bear out a bit more, tell us about that piece of work? what are you exploring in terms of using AI to increase the richness of our data and the effectiveness of our decision making? Thank you.
And then I'll pass over to Paul in a moment. At the moment, some of the performance data is kept in spreadsheets that one officer has access to and no one else, or sets of other collected together stuff, and we then have to try and pull it out of people. Some stuff is kept in forms that are on shared things, other bits are kept in bits that are, so we've got stuff actually in lots of different formats. What we want to do is pull all of those together, but then actually when we begin to pull those into other spreadsheets to pull them all together, how we then take those out and communicate is something that we could spend hours and hours of staff time on, or actually begin to work in ways that use staff time smartly at setting all of that up, so that the way stuff is presented to the public might be different to the way a manager of a team needs to see stuff, but the same data will be feeding in. So if you need something to manage an HMO licensing team, that will feed through into all sorts of other stuff, similarly in children's services. So there's a whole bit about what we do using technology to make sure that data is all available, not hidden, and that it's able to be pulled together in comparable formats into central systems to be able to be fed out, because at the moment that isn't the case across a lot of the council. So in terms of performance, we just don't know, we have to work really hard, and why you get, even in a report that's 12, out of date, there's still other data that's really out of date because we've not managed to extract it out of places. So Paul can talk to you about some of the practicalities that he's working on, but it is very much about, how we handle what we've got better, so that we can actually know what we've got, but actually then begin to use that and interrogate it and do things in different ways. Because at the moment, I think a lot of us are struggling to do that. I understand officers are struggling to do it, which means that it goes up through, and certainly Cabinet can, and it makes it very difficult for us to come to you with scrutiny, with sets of consistent data. Now that data we will be modelling around the new national framework and LGA Inform, so that we are consistent with other councils, because that's when you can begin to then match what we're doing with what other councils are doing in real ways and in more real time, rather than this is what people were doing 12 months ago because it's taken that long for everyone to get their data into one source, because that's actually pretty useless. So that's why I've been pushing on this. I've been pushing a while, and Paul is now taking that forward, and I've been working with Paul for the last 6 months on this. So and that's as long as we've been working together, because there's been quite a lot of change in this because we've not had a COO. But Paul, over to you.
Right.
Thank you, Councillor.
Before you speak, Paul, could I ask that members and officers be as succinct with their answers, so that we can get more questions in rather than huge statements? Thank you.
I will try to do so. Hi, I'm Paul Stevens. I'm currently leading the corporate performance team for the council. So there's two things we're trying to do, and it's all about working smarter. One is around automation, and the other is around using AI where it's appropriate to do so. The first part, which we were talking about, was using one set of data, which we can then use automation of reporting using a tool called Power BI. That is the tool that's being used for this report. And we've got a number of other reports which we're using that tool. It basically goes to that data set once we've set it up, and once we update the data, it updates the report for us. So that's reducing a lot of time updating things like Excel, where you would have seen a lot of other reports based in Excel. We're trying to move to this Power BI automated, that once it's set up, it's easier to upload in the future or refresh in the future. I'm trying to use AI where it's appropriate to do so, and that's to take a look at what we're putting into the reports, review it, and come up with some form of narrative as a starting point. We're not relying wholly on AI, because AI can get information wrong. It's just a starting point for our narrative that we can then build on, add to, fact check, but it helps us to produce more with less, if that makes sense.
May I be allowed a supplementary?
Yeah.
A short one?
Yeah.
It won't be short. Thank you very much for that answer. So it feels like we've got like a very base data hygiene issue that we need to kind of get really on top of, partly using automation, partly using, you mentioned a Microsoft product there. I'm still interested in, can you just explain a bit more about assuming we've got all the base stuff right, and the data hygiene, what is the layer on top? Can you just probe a little bit more about that? Because, you know, there are a lot of local authorities being pilots, you know, we've got, you know, how are we really being as ambitious as we can be here, and how are we making you know, assuming of course that we've got the underlying data sets right, like how are we using this to inform our decision making down the line?
Okay, so thank you. What I would say is we've got this is a first step to automation. It's not fully automated. It's not, the data's not being drawn from systems. We are having to take data from systems and collating that data, so there is a risk of error, but we do you know, check the information as much as we physically can, but it's a first step to all that automation. It's not fully automated. I don't want to give that impression. It really is a first step. It's only a tool that we've had for the last few months. We are starting to learn how to use the tool as we go, but we do need to invest time in getting the foundation of that information correct as well.
Go on, because this was meant to be, I get, no, it's absolutely fine, Councillor Holloway, because as the way this report has gone, we're talking more about the future than the past. So I'm happy for you to do this. But I also would say that when the report comes back to us to scrutinise next time, we will be able to go into this detail more fully, but feel free, carry on.
Thank you, sorry. No, I'm not apologising. It was Councillor Penberthy who said this would be more about the future than the past, so my question's in that spirit. How successful do you think we're being in getting our senior management in the council to, you know, what more can we do to move at the pace that you want to see, Paul, and I guess Chris, to upskill this? How are we doing on that front?
I won't drop Paul in having to talk about his bosses and their bosses. I think there are some areas where there is culture change needed. And I think that is important. We've had a whole raft of new CMT, actually quite a lot of new SMT members in, who are bringing a whole new dynamic to that. We're already seeing, if you watch the Cabinet discussion on this report, where you will have spotted there's quite a lot in transport and highways that was missing a lot of data because Paul and his team hadn't been able to get it. We've now got a new interim director in that area, and lo and behold, John Stevens was able to give everyone the data, because that morning he'd said, Chris, what's going on here? I said, well, this is the situation. He got the data. So we're already beginning to see in some of those areas where we previously found it difficult, people doing, we know in housing that there's been a lot of work being done in Dave Ryland's team to put a whole load of stuff into stuff that is shareable. So I think we're going through some culture change. The fact that I've been talking with Tracy about this, that it's a key one for the COO coming in, I think gives us some hope going forward. I wouldn't be coming and saying, we're going to do this radical thing that is going to be sort of trialed this year and going live next year if I didn't think that we had the opportunity to do it. I know I've talked to Glenn about this in terms of his directorate, because they are probably furthest away from a balanced scorecard. He wants it to. He needs it to be able to do his role. So, you know, there's that. When you talked earlier about the role of AI, I think that comes once we've got the automation bit right. At the moment, when we're looking forward, how are we doing against other people is fine, but then actually how do we model some of that? How do we set our future performance targets, which sets budgets and other things, is really important. And we can use AI, I think, a lot in helping us model better. And, you know, I sit down with Matt Garrett and we are literally saying, is this the right assumption to make on how many extras we put in a spreadsheet? Because a lot of it is gut feel. So I think you're right to be focusing on that. We will be touching on it in the framework. I think it's a developmental role and one that we're learning. We are looking at what the other pilots are doing. We know we're way behind them and we need to catch up and then try and get better and try and be front of the pack, not back of the pack.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the AI thing as well. We're supposed to be getting Power BI at work, by the way, and it's been a long wait, so good luck with that. For us, anything, I just want to put it on the record, I am deeply opposed to the use of AI for a variety of political reasons, which I will not air because I know I will not stop the juggernaut, but I really, really object to it. And when you're talking about data mining and data hygiene and data this and data that, as a teacher, as a journalist, as a door-knocking politician, one thing I know is that most people are not swayed by the data. They stick with their belief. And that applies even in my work, where we've got data that proves that some of our longest held beliefs are incorrect. And I can't get my manager to change his mind because he's held the beliefs for so long. So are you doing anything to make sure that the culture is that if the data says something is true, that people just accept that it's true and begin to act on that, because otherwise the whole thing is a waste of time.
Councillor Pemberthy, I see come back.
No, I was going to say, actually, that's beyond the performance framework in many ways. However, we need data for lots of things. Yes, it's to inform what we're doing in the future, but actually, do we know that what we're getting in terms of outputs for the inputs are the right outputs for the inputs? And more importantly, are those producing the right outcomes? And we don't know that unless we track data. And some of that data is held in more than one place. So if we go, say I take a team that I work with, in terms of the rough sleepers team, the contact they have with someone that might start a journey, do we know whether the successful outcome happens means that it's not only tracking their housing needs, it might be tracking about financial security. Almost definitely there will be complex needs that might mean about mental health outcomes, might be about addiction outcomes, might be about domestic violence and all sorts of other things. If we're not able to do some smart stuff with data, then actually understanding, is this the right intervention at the start, doesn't produce the right outcome at the end. And I think there is a lot of people in the council who are really keen on getting the right outcomes and want to make sure that we do the right interventions at the front so that we do the very best for people. Now, I think almost any cabinet member could talk about, if I understand this better, I can make some policy interventions that mean we get this better at the end. And if we don't have the right sets of data and aren't able to understand performance or see how we're doing against other people using comparable data sets to say, well, why are they doing so much better than us, especially if there's a similar demographic or a similar length of road or a similar acreage of wood, then we're never going to learn and we're never going to improve. So I think it's not the be all and end all, but it's a really important tool in both management and governance pockets.
Councillor Gilmore, you wanted to come back?
I do. And that all sounds very shiny and lovely, but if you're getting down to that level of granularity, I think your data sets will be too small to give meaningful results. And if you're talking about comparing with other people, unless they're using exactly the same database with exactly the same fields tracked in it, then you still can't. So I'm still unconvinced that people, human beings, will change their minds based on the data, because we all know they don't when we're on the doorstep. And I know as a teacher that overturning misconceptions is one of the most difficult things you do. So I think that is a concern that you should think about. That's the end from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Finn?
One comment on data. Are you using it to quantify or qualify an argument? End of. No further discussion on that. What I want to do is go back to the housing data to which you presented on page 43, because We know from our scrutiny panel that only 250 to 300 social houses for social rent are being built, and that's being facilitated by the council officers for funding to PCH and various social housing providers. Is there not a case, or can you envisage a situation going forward to actually increase supply, that we actually consider a model to which we actually start providing housing? Point one. And it was interesting, I was speaking to a dentist friend the other day, because we've had a scrutiny committee and scrutiny committee about dentistry and the failings in dentistry. He offered a...
Could I ask you to keep to the point, please, Councillor Finn?
So when we go to NHS dental provision and the challenges facing it, obviously looking forward, better access to health and dentistry in your report, is there not a case to be made as well that if any dentist that uses a Plymouth Dental School, that uses student loans for their training, i.e. government funded, all right, have to commit to 5 years in the NHS? Apparently it will cure the problem tomorrow. Just like private companies do if you undergo training in certain areas, that there is, and is there a case to be made or a recommendation to be made possibly from this panel or referral back to the Health and Scrutiny panel, that that proposal be put forward to the MPs to take to Parliament? It would be a carrot and stick situation. Obviously, how it would work out is a different situation.
I've tolerated and tolerated.
That's all right, Councillor.
That is not part of the remit, but you can bring it up at the relevant opportunity, Councillor Finn. I'm not even going to give Councillor Penberthy the respect to answer that question. I am going to move on. Has anybody else got anything to say?
It was just to improve us, just.
Okay, I think I've been very tolerant tonight on what the corporate monitoring report is. I will not be so tolerant going forward, because we had a lot of veering from where we were, but I wanted to let everybody have their speak. So we will, I put it to the panel that we note the report. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Penberthy, for your time this evening. You may go. I'll now move on to... he's already gone. We now move on to item number 9, which is on pages 79 to 84 of your packs. Let me just get to the page. Okay. Any... You beat me, Councillor Allinson.
You know what I'm going to say, because it's the same thing I've said in the last 4 of these meetings. This isn't the forward plan we're looking for. Can we please have the actual forward plan that I know exists and that we keep asking for in this meeting and never gets supplied? I've seen the 5-item page that's on the website. Anyone can see that. I want the actual forward plan of the council. It exists. Why can't we see it?
I share your frustration. What I will do is I will now take this directly to the leader of the council, and I share your frustration. That's all I can say. So I will take this to the leader of the council, providing the committee agree with me, and then bring it back at the next meeting.
Yes.
Through you, Chair, just to add that the Leaders Forward Plan of Key Decisions, which is attached, is the one set out in our terms of reference as we must view. I'm not aware of an infinite list of decisions that exist, but we will take this offline.
We will certainly take it offline. All right. So I will ask members to note that. and we will move on. So I'm going to move now to update from committee chairs and work programmes. I did speak to Elliot before the meeting because at the last meeting we had an update from all of the chairs, and there's only been one scrutiny meeting since the last one. But I think it was Councillor Ricketts's one that met. So I'm gonna ask Councillor Ricketts if there's any updates that he'd like to give us. I will then ask any of the chairs whether they've got anything else that they want to say before we move on. So, Councillor Ricketts, is there anything you'd like to bring to us?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, time flies. Yeah, had a really good skills meeting dedicated to skills. Had relevant partners in, which was excellent. We had a naval-based tour in that time. I think that's happened since. We've got a Tinside tour penciled in a week or so, a couple of weeks. Looking forward to our Pillar 3, our meeting in October, in a week's time. So it's all coming together. Fast moving, yeah, really good.
Okay, Councillor Murphy?
Chair, I didn't, Chair, we don't meet until October the 14th, but if you look at our work programme, I've actually only brought in two. Well, we always have the quarterly finance and performance reports. They come in every meeting, but there's only two items that we've decided to put on our agenda this week, because we want to, for this meeting, because we really want to scrutinise them, especially outcomes, because there's been concerns about people being discharged from hospital too early into residential homes and then having to get readmitted into hospitals because they weren't ready to leave the hospital. So we're looking at really scrutinising that. So that's all I can say on that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Blight?
Thank you very much. Likewise, the Children, Young Peoples and Families Scrutiny doesn't meet until the 8th of October. We have had our planning meeting, so I was very pleased to see the corporate plan information that we had in this meeting provides a lot of information regarding absence data in the city, and absence is an item that I've asked for the scrutiny panel to address because there are concerns, particularly secondary and special schools. So that's some very good information that we have here that can be fed into our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Finn?
Yeah, we don't meet to the 22nd of next month, so nothing really to report. However, one thing I would like to say is at the last audit... Yeah, no, it was just at the last audit and governance, there was a bit of controversy. As Vice Chair, I just think we need to bring this, that there was a tax on the people present and the officers, and that what we've tried, I think what we must all be careful of is going forward is that, yeah, it can get as political as it wants in here, but whatever it does, it doesn't come back to a personal attack on officers. I'd just like to bring that because it was pretty much out of order, and I, Vice Chair, had to write to the officer, as with other members of the audit and governance, to say, you know, such a behaviour isn't acceptable. So I'd just like to bring that going forward.
I think you've made that point, but actually, is that a report on your scrutiny panel? But I think I think I'm going to kind of bring my authority in here. I understand why you did it and why you said it, and I think we all need to respect each other. But if I ask for a report on a scrutiny panel, then I expect a report on the scrutiny panel. All right? Right, so thank you for your updates. We now move to our work programme, which is page 103 to 108. We've taken the notes to add on. Councillor Ricketts, we made some recommendations earlier. That will then be factored in to our work programme. Do members have any suggestions or anything that they feel we should add to that? Because we've made notes of what we've said earlier today. So are we happy with that? It looks like we are. So we will move. Yes, Councillor Holloway.
The 5th of November is looking pretty packed, isn't it? So if we've got the rollover item that my dear colleague highlighted, there's a lot of important items in there. I'm just questioning, have we sense checked the amount of time, given that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11 items on the agenda? Just flagging that up, just scrutinising the scrutiny.
It's funny you should mention that, Councillor Holloway, because we were looking at that earlier on today. And I think we do need to have enough time to give each of things the due time that they deserve. So I was going to bring this up when I'd finish, that actually if the committee would agree that both the chair and the vice chair re-look at that agenda to make sure that we can provide the time. Thank you. I agree with you. Councillor Allinson.
Thank you. Can I make a recommendation, which is, we've spent an hour and 45 minutes today only on standing items and one additional item, which was the report about cycling. Can we not, given that meeting is the 5th of November and this meeting is the 24th of September, can we not take the standing items off, given that essentially the finance monitoring report, the risk register, they're going to be identical paperwork to what we're looking at this evening? You just hold all of the standing orders until the following meeting.
I will just confer to make sure that I have the authority, or we have the authority to do that.
Through you, Chair, it doesn't specify within the Constitution how frequently we must consider those standing items. The minimum is that we consider them, so I would ascertain that's within your prerogative to do so. What I could suggest, however, is they are included, but with the distinction of no introductory presentation, it's questions fielded only. Alternatively, we could remove them.
Sorry, Chair, yeah, I support that. I think that's a sensible approach to managing some of those standing items, is that the panel has the information and then we can go into questioning as necessary. That would be my...
Okay, we have a proposal from Councillor Allinson, which I'm told we can do. So I'm going to ask for a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Steele. And I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Chair, what's the proposal?
Right, could you read it out again? Councillor Allinson.
My proposal is that given the next meeting is 5 weeks away and the fundamental core of this whole meeting has been the standing items, that actually we could skip those standing items to the next meeting and just have the reports and the paperwork, but not use the time in the meeting to discuss those standing items, so that we can spend more time talking about the actual scrutiny topics on the agenda. We seem to have gotten into a habit now where we spend the entire scrutiny meeting, and last meeting was exactly the same. We've filled 2 hours of scrutiny with standing items, which are reports that are available to everybody at any time. And actually, we should be scrutinising the LGR and the hybrid working, that kind of stuff, the actual important topics that the council is doing. We're not discussing, because we're spending all our time looking at the risk register, which is identical to last time we saw it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ricketts.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's a highly unusual situation to see the agenda like that. I think things happen. I don't know, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with standing items are not like, they're the meat to everything we do. They're the most important documents. You know, things can get out of hand quite quickly, and actually we're open to lots of events occurring. So I don't know about knocking them off, but if the proposal is they're just sort of, I think it's really for, I would have just assumed that Mark, you would have just sort of taken on our points and did the work behind the scenes. Maybe start the meeting earlier, maybe have an extra meeting. I'm a bit uncomfortable knocking important items off.
I don't,
Just to add,
Councillor Steele indicated that he wanted to talk straight away.
I seconded it. We just voted. So why are we still debating it? I was keen.
Well, for clarification for those people that may be watching online, and for our legal representative, no vote was taken. Councillor Allenson.
just a point of clarification, my suggestion is not that we remove any of them from the agenda or that we don't put any of it in the pack. My suggestion is we don't have anybody here to represent it. You can still read them, and if you've got a question, you can still raise that question. But actually, what I'm attempting to do is to free up more time in these meetings so we can actually talk about the important topic. So you'll still get the paperwork and you still get all the data and you'll still be able to ask the question you want, but we'll move on more quickly in the meeting to the actual substance of the work of the council.
That is sensible. It's just a point of clarification because when you initially spoke, you did say to remove. We can watch it back to remove them. If they're still there in the papers, then that's fair point.
Right, so Councillor Holloway.
I have a further clarificatory question. Just, are you proposing that the cabinet leads for the standing items would not be present at all for those items?
That's fine by me.
Right, okay. So do we understand what, Councillor Allenson, this is becoming a little bit,
Sorry, just to clarify, this is the first meeting we've had anybody from the cabinet attend for any standing items. Previously, we didn't have anybody come to the standing items. We would still have a cabinet member here for like the LGR and the hybrid working. There would still be somebody here to present the actual reports. But actually, this meeting was unusual that we had somebody present the standing items.
right, I'm going to interject here because I've just been tapped by my Democratic support officer saying, I wish to speak. So I'm going to let him speak.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, there is no formal vote required for how you structure the agenda. It's for members to suggest items. It's for you and your Vice Chair to decide at the agenda set. What I would say is if we keep the order as is on the current work programme, you have your 3 meaty items. If you erode all of your time for that, the rest of them can be taken straight as questions. If you end up with more time, you can go into more depth. We will still invite the cabinet members, but obviously sometimes Ian fields questions on behalf of Councillor Lowry, so there is no strict requirement for them there. If Ian's able to cover that, they will be taken pretty much as to read, I imagine, given the length. Thank you.
So thank you, Elliot, for clarifying that. What we will do is, the Vice Chair has just whispered in my ear, Councillor Allenson, that we will use the next meeting as an experiment. We will set the agenda and that ourselves, and then we can review it at the end of it. Are you happy with that?
Fine by me, yeah.
Excellent. So I don't need to put anything to a vote because we're not actually changing anything. So thank you for that. We will now move to our action log, and Elliot will go through that.
Thank you, Chair. I don't plan on going through them one by one, but happy to field any questions. Members will see that there's 5 marked green as complete, there's 3 marked in progress. Each of those 3 in progress is actually almost complete. A lot of that relates to things like the select committee. We've made the arrangements, we've agreed it today, we just need to hold it. So they're all on track, but we'll take questions. Thank you.
Councillor Allenson.
Yeah, minute number 5. It's marked as complete. The leader's forward plan agreed to endorse that the chair and leader and all cabinet members are requesting to share details of their upcoming decisions for the next 12 months. Well, the report we've got today didn't complete that task.
Through you, Chair. The ones received back from Cabinet members were shared at the informal work programming session. Happy to forward them out by email. That is the list we have received from Cabinet members. We did write to them and they were encouraged to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Item 13 is Councillor Steele.
Just to make sure that I'm clear on things so I don't misunderstand anything. So what's the decision there? Are you going to keep it as status as being complete, or is it something that's going to go back to being in progress, given the feedback from Councillor Allison?
Through you, Chair. That action is completed. If members feel that that was not sufficiently completed, this is the time and opportunity to reissue those actions or tweak them or change them.
I think the point that Councillor Allinson and I agree on was when we go back earlier, what we actually did was completed, but what we're saying is that we wanted a full forward plan and we would be able to then go through that. Now, I've already committed with the Vice Chair to go to the leader to produce that or get the leader. In fact, what we might do is invite the leader to come and talk about it if it's not possible. So I would hope that that was sufficient. And I can see that Councillor Allinson is nodding in agreement. So we will, thank you, Councillor Steele, we will move on. And we've got item 13 and item 14, which are the exempt business and also the opportunity for me to go into the part 2 to sign the minutes of the previous meeting. As we've now agreed them earlier in the meeting as a part 1, that is the end of the meeting, and I thank you for your attendance.